Hey everybody, this is the separate part of the tutorial, and I like to call this the real tutorial, which is, you go through a lot of these and you kind of take away that's based around the technique and it's based around, pulling from reference or this or that. I want to talk about exactly how I got to where I am now. I can only tell you my own experiences, so hopefully it'll give you some idea of what the road is like to actually getting to a place where you can do what I'm doing. I don't mean to say, and I'll always say this, that I'm the best artist in the world or anything like that. It's just my own personal journey to the point, because I think that it's unfair to give you a set of, you know, like a technique to follow and then say, there you go, that's how you do it, because it's not. So I want to talk about how I started. I've drawn my whole life. On and off. Obviously, not as much as I do now, because when I was a little kid, my full-time job wasn't working on video games or movies or anything like that. It was just being a little kid that was trying to have fun. So I like drawing like anime. I drew like a lot of my own comic books when I was little. I had like a lined notebook that I used to fill up with comics. I used to actually recreate my own Garfield comics. That was a huge deal. I had like a whole series of them based on those like collections that they'd put out. If you ever saw them, they were like the horizontal prints of those big books, and I was obsessed with them. I used to buy them at my school's little book fairs, and I was obsessed. So yeah, I basically drew, maybe like 3 months out of the year when I was in high school. When I started to get older, it was less and less. I drew all the time in class, and that was like the ongoing thing. But I rotated between a lot of different things. I used to skateboard, make movies with my friends, make stupid songs, just anything that was like fun and could make me escape from the town I lived in. So I never took it too seriously. I never had aspirations to be an artist, like I wasn't that kid that you would see and be like, oh, that's an art prodigy or whatever. There was a kid like that in my school, grade below me. I have come from a really small school, so I actually was in a class, I think like 115 people graduated, and I was like one of the only people who did art in my whole class. So I ended up getting the art scholarship, but I couldn't afford to go to art school. And I asked them, because I had still had an interest in concept art. My friend Dan and I were in school together, and we would look at like conceptart.org, and we actually saw like a lot of the massive black teams work, and we were like, wow, that's really cool. And Dan really wanted to do concept art. I wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to do. Kind of wanted to just do comic books, but I didn't know. Like I had heard that you didn't make any money and whatever, the things that you always hear. And so I got a tablet because I saw the digital art on there instead of having a scholarship to go to school. And I would work on and off with that thing, and I hated it so much that I like never used it. So what I'm trying to get at is that I didn't really have some like strong drive to really get into doing art seriously, and it didn't happen until I started to actually face some pressure. So I want to talk about the pressure to succeed. I got in some legal problems that made it so that I couldn't get a job, and I had seen that people were doing freelance online doing art, and I saw that there were some lower level artists getting work, and I thought to myself, I can do this. I was like, I bet I could do this if I worked really, really hard. I think I could do it. Um, I applied a lot of actually what I learned from skateboarding to doing art, or I would skateboard and I wanted to nail tricks, and I would get really into it, and I would basically spend like 5 hours practicing one trick over and over and over and over and over. And I was thinking to myself, if I just did that with art, I bet I could actually get somewhere. So I had this big pressure. I was 19 at the time, and I really didn't want to just be a total failure. I kept thinking that like I would never be able to do anything, and all my options, like, they were gone. And I just was like, I need to find a way to figure this out. So I started looking at the website conceptart.org, and I saw that there was a sketchbook section. And what it was basically was like the behind the scenes of, you get to see the finished work in one section, and then you'd see in the sketchbook section what people were doing on their own, like in their free time, or what they did to learn. And I saw just a basic outline going through my favorite artists at the time, like Bumsky, Bjorn Hurry. There was so many of them. Robot Pencil, no, Mr. Roboto. Who was that? I can't remember his name. And then just like, Salaryman, tons of those people. And I would look through their sketchbooks and be like, okay, so it isn't just this finished work. They're not just these people that put out finished products all the time. They actually do all of this structure work behind the scenes. And I started kind of copying their approach. I wasn't totally sure if I was doing it the right way, and you kind of get this vague feeling that you could be doing things better. And I had just started, and it was really my only resource. But it helped me a ton to just see that other people were working on this stuff on the side and growing this way. And you could see like, oh, 3 years ago they sucked and now they're great. And, I can see every single thing that they did from then until now. But still, it was pretty vague. So what it taught me, though, was looking through it. I was like, wow, these people, they're tackling these things that are really hard. They're going after stuff that they don't know how to do. They're basically like trying to narrow down, just hone it down to this thing that's the thing I'm doing wrong, and then they would study it. And that's scary because it invites a lot of failure into your life, where all of a sudden you're on this forum with all of these people that you respect, and you're almost being like pushed to share the things that you can't do, and growing off of the feedback that you get from your peers who want to help you grow. So that general like philosophy in the group helped me a ton at being honest with myself. So yeah, it was like I had to start actually following the studies, not copying the same way that they were doing it, but trying to see in myself what I could improve on personally. Sure, there's the general idea of studies, but what do you suck at, And that was like a huge part of it. Just looking at myself saying, okay, I need to work on this, this, and this the most, because I'm dancing around it, doing the things that I think will make me look good, as opposed to just being honest and saying, no, do this. This is the hard stuff. Make it happen. So because of that, I had kind of a shaky start in the beginning. I was kind of getting used to like focusing on the things I wasn't great at, but it was really hard. So I would put up a lot of personal things, a lot of like, stuff that I felt like would just get responses. And I kind of had to take a step back after a little bit when I felt like I was kind of plateauing, and figure out what's the really hard thing. What's the really hard thing I should be focusing on? Sure, there's just studies that are similar to what other people are doing. What's my thing again? So I contacted some people that were on the forum. I talked to Coro, Justin Coro Kaufman, and then, who else did I contact? There's a whole bunch of them. I think I contacted Justin Sweet, Daryl Mandrake, just a whole bunch of people who told me what to do. So I ended up structuring myself in a certain way where I would do anatomy, I would focus on form, I'd do lighting studies, value studies, master copies, I'd study up in color theory. And the whole thing about it was that I was basically breaking out and learning to go outside of my comfort zones that I had created for myself. Because even in the study environment, I had focused less on doing the ones that mattered and more on the ones that I felt I could execute well and show people. And that's totally wrong. You don't want to do that. Whenever you feel yourself kind of doing something that's easy for you, stop. There's this really good saying that I read in a book, and I was like, wow, that's good. It was what you fear doing most is what you most need to do. And I was afraid of doing a lot of stuff. I was afraid of drawing hands, afraid of drawing feet, afraid of color. I was afraid of very saturated colors, specifically. And I was intimidated by all of the big words and everything that it felt like you needed to learn in order to actually understand art and be able to do it. But I learned over time, just by breaking it down into little boxes, that if I just structured down what I was doing, I could make it manageable. It's hard to do it all when you're looking at, like this vast sea of information, and you're saying, I need to learn all of this. You don't need to learn all of it right away. You do one piece at a time. You want to actually be able to take in the information. And taking in the information involves actually applying your work. So like a lot of the studies that I would do, I would just do them. Like I would do anatomy, just random anatomy. And then later that day I would draw like a monster. And what was wrong about that for me was that I wasn't getting anything out of that study anymore. Like I would do the study, but then I wasn't actually using it. So it didn't stick in my mind. So I had to start applying my studies, which was kind of weird, but I made up like a rule in my head. I think my dad told me this. He said, you do anything like, 18 times a day and you'll start to nail it down. I'm pretty sure that's just a random number he chose, but he said it to me like it was a magic number. And when I was younger, and it just kind of stuck with me. So I would do 18 of the same study, just drawing it like from like an anatomy book, like Loomis or Bridgman. And I would do like the leg study 18 times in a row in the morning before I did anything else. And then for another 18 times, I would try and redraw it from my imagination, and without looking at the study or looking at the book. So I would just try and nail it down in my head, try and like get that information cemented in there. And I did that every day for maybe like a year, or maybe a little less than a year. I'm not really sure. But I would do just multiple studies in pencil, and sometimes I would do like colored pencil too, because I had these tone sketchbooks to like render out the lighting and form. But that helped me a lot. And also doing like a study from a photograph, I would, work with the same colors when I actually jumped into doing personal work, and I would try and use everything from that photo in it. And that helped me learn a lot about lighting and things. But as I kept going, I realized that the application version of the studies was so much better than the vague, what am I doing, take a shot in the dark kind of deal. But yeah, it was great. I was actually like identifying a lot of problems. I was realizing how much I didn't know by having to replicate the things, try and bring them out of my head, being like, now that you understand that thing, do it. So I was making these mistakes every single day. Like I would do the correct thing, and then I would fail 18 times in a row right after that and be like, wow. But yeah, you have to make those mistakes. You have to know what you don't know. You have to be able to work on those tough problems, because if you're not, then you're not really doing anything or advancing yourself, especially if you know that you should be somewhere else or you want to be somewhere else and growing. So with that, I kind of had this realization in the moment that I couldn't just keep doing this stuff. I was working every morning doing like 3 hours of silent studying, or I'd listen to music, and then I would like go for a walk or exercise, and then I would switch between personal work and client work for the rest of the day, and towards the end of the night I would do more studies. I had like a 16 or 14 to 16 hour day, and I was doing this for like a year or maybe a little longer than that, like 2 years. In the very beginning I was doing a ton of work, but it wasn't the structured study stuff. So I've been basically doing art for 8 or 9 years, completely into it. But, the first 2 was kind of vague and strange. And then the next, like, well, from that point on, basically it became a structured thing. But what was difficult about it was just the whole isolation aspect of doing the studies. It's really hard to force yourself to do something that is that difficult, where you're looking at it every day, being like, I have to fail again for hours and hours. So I wanted to try and make it easier on myself as well as show everybody else like my journey there. I really like the way the conceptart.org had the sketchbook section set up, where you could watch somebody's progress from when they started to where they ended up. If it's a professional that you really like, it was really cool to see the whole journey. So I was thinking in my head, I'll be able to do this. I can, I know myself. I'll be able to stick to this. I've been doing it so far on my own. If I have like a whole group behind me or like a little community or something from the sketchbooks, then it'll be that much easier. So I started the Crimson Daggers with all that in mind. I wanted to have my whole art journey kind of thing online, so you could watch it in video form, and you could hear me talk about like what I was struggling with, or how how hard it was to do client work in the beginning. And I thought it would be kind of like the sketchbook section, but in video format. And it ended up, at first it was really slow. You'd have like 10 people from the group hanging out and watching me just draw my study stuff and talk. But eventually it grew and it grew. And it got to the point where it ended up being like a regular thing. I told myself every day I'm going to be on here at 8 o'clock. I put it up online. I'm going to be on here at 8 a.m. every day. And I'm going to be on for a couple hours, so come and study with me. I think the slogan was wake up, work hard, and stop being a loser. And it ended up creating this almost natural, dedication kind of thing of like, I didn't even think about it anymore. Whereas before I thought studies was this really hard, like, how do you make yourself do it kind of chore. It now became just a regular part of my life. And that was the best part about the Crimson Daggers for me personally, just how it affected my growth, was that it became like brushing your teeth. At first you don't want to brush your teeth. You'll fight it. You'll fight your mom or your dad or whoever. And then eventually you just do it on your own, and you almost forget that it's something that you used to hate doing. And studies became that for me, and it taught me a lot about dedication from the group. You'd watch all these other people working hard and other people expecting you to be there. And it was like, yeah, of course I'll be there. Yeah, of course I'll do a study. Yeah, I'll have to challenge myself because all you guys are watching me. So for me, that was a huge thing. And I don't know if it's possible for you to do something like this. I had the benefit of already being semi-known on the forums. I had like friends on there and people that would look at my sketchbook, and from there it was easy enough to get some people on board. But even if you have friends that just are along for the ride, just with you, and you guys hold yourself to a standard and say that you're going to do something every single day, you'll make it happen. One thing you can do is better than nothing. If you do nothing else, just have somebody, or just hold yourself responsible for the work. Your family or something. Have them be like, have them ask you if you did your stuff today, or ask them to, tell you they want to see it. Have like a check-in kind of thing. Maybe you do that with your friends, whoever. But have something in place to help you along the way, because it is a really hard road, full of failure, and yeah, you're gonna psych yourself out of like actually doing the work, and it's pretty hard. Anything you can do helps. So essentially what that did for me was it got me like kind of obsessed with hitting walls. And what I mean by that is, in the studies, it wasn't just that you kind of did the vague studies. Like I was saying, you applied them and everything. Like we had this Crimson Daggers blood sports where you would do the challenge, but a part of the challenge was that you had to show your studies. You had to show everything that you did that directly related to your final painting, your illustration. And it had to be like studies of the background, studies of what the character's wearing, texture things. Maybe you used a reference for a portrait, but you painted from that and then did the illustration from your imagination. So it was all these things that would inform the final product. And what I found from doing things like that similarly in my client work and everything else was that I would get to a point in a painting where I would just run into something that I did not know how to do. And what those challenges and the general like vibe of the Crimson Daggers instilled in me was that, okay, now it's time to go back and study that thing. So that's what it's been from this point on, is every single time I run into a wall, I know that's something I need to work on. It's not about like hiding the thing that you suck at or trying to like, just only put out the work that you're the most proud of. Never show anything else. It was never about that in the group, and it's, because of the group, it's still not like that for me. So what helps me grow now is hitting walls. Every single time I find myself not understanding something, I'll go back and study it, or make a note or anything. And yeah, it helps me continue to just basically identify problems in my work and hopefully move past them. And one thing that really kind of got to me as I went was that I originally thought I wanted to be an artist. I was like, I want to be an illustrator. I want to work on magic cards. I want to do RPG books. I want to work in a video game. I want to work in a movie. I want to make my own comic book. I want to do all of these things. And I thought that just getting to that point would be enough. So I would just basically be there being like, as soon as I get magic card work, that's when I'm going to feel really good. And you do feel really good when you hit the benchmarks you set for yourself, the goals along the way. But what I didn't realize then, and and I've heard a million times, is that it's not about the journey. I mean, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Where you think that you want to like be somebody, but you don't want to be somebody. You want to be the person that got there. You want to have all the experiences that took you to that place. It's like when you see a depressed millionaire or something, or somebody who bought a company, and is just sitting on it like, I don't know what to do. Like, I have no inspiration for this. Like, there's a ton of entrepreneurs that I've read about who will basically say, I built this studio or this company or whatever else. And then they're just like, and now that I run it, I don't know what I'm doing, because they're not doing the heavy lifting anymore. They're not on that road. They're not building the next thing. So it's interesting to look at that now and be like, I don't even care about necessarily getting to a place anymore, like getting there and being there. It's more about what's the next thing. What's the next thing? Like there's always something ahead of you. So even though something looks like it's this bright, shiny, idealistic, whatever, and that all your problems are going to go away when you finally reach it, it's not true. It's an ongoing process. And you should always be chasing that failure, the next thing that you're not basically doing that you want to do. Because a lot of people end up coasting. I've been that guy. I've seen that guy. It's you work for a long time, you get to a place, and then you sit there and you wonder why you're not happy doing that forever. Because you're pushing yourself before to get there. You're excited, and then you get the thing and you kind of just plateau. So just be stubborn and keep pushing, keep growing beyond that, and don't fear anybody else. I talk about this in the actual tutorial, but every time I get to a point where I feel like I'm comfortable, I'll stop and do something else, even if people don't like it. Like, I stopped and did a more simple style, and everybody told me, just go back to your painting style, this is stupid. There's always the people that are nice and like the thing, but you always hear the negative people out of the crowd, and it's strange to fight that, because it's like once you have people that will look at your work, it's hard to kind of go against that and say, like, well, here's something you don't want to see. This is what I'm not good at. But I think it's necessary just to get better. And you can do that on your own, and you don't need to show anybody. That's totally fine. But just from my own experience in dealing with everything online and whatever else, you should never fear the crowd. Personal work is personal for a reason. And art is, what's more personal than you creating something from your imagination? It's yours. And never be afraid to just do what you like to do. It's yours. You own the thing. There's somebody else like you that's going to resonate with because you love it. And if you trust that, then you're good. But yeah, basically, chase what you love doing. Never stop in a place. Always let yourself go beyond what you think you can do. If you have a goal that seems really hard, one thing for me that seemed really hard is animation. I love watching animation though, and I have so much respect for people who do it. I can't believe it. And the same thing with comic book artists and tons of other professions. But there's no reason why you can't attempt those things. So if you're in the place that you wanted to be when you started and you're just sitting there, but there's other things in your life that you want to pursue, just go ahead and pursue them. You're totally free to do that. And in that way, you'll keep growing. You'll keep kind of, gleaning information from everything that will inform everything else you do. And I think that's how you stay happy and, actually keep the energy up to pursue the next thing around the bend. And hopefully, you end up finding something that's even closer to what you love doing, aside from the job that you will settle with or that you might have settled with. But yeah, every single thing I just talked about is stuff that I feel makes you who you are. This is my own personal, opinion. This is, what I feel has helped me the most. Techniques and tips and all that kind of thing. It's okay, and it's nice to just get the information and take it and apply it to your work. But if you are at a point and you feel like you need to improve, and if you are watching this because you want to be able to do this for a living, then hopefully this helped, because this is more what it's about, is the constant drive to improve. It's, again, unfair of me to say, buy this tutorial and you'll learn how to draw and paint like me, because you won't. That's all on you and what you're willing to put into it. If you're willing to make the sacrifice, fail all the time, work through the failure, and come out the other side as whoever you'll end up being, then that's what really matters. Not the little tutorial thing you get here and there. It's the time invested and how hard you work for it. But yeah, I hope this helped somewhat. If it didn't, you can tell me to shut up and then just go watch the tutorial, and that's more technical. But yeah, keep doing what you're doing, and I hope you're having fun. And if you're not having fun, go chase what that is, because you can always turn the hard stuff into something that's enjoyable if you're creative. And if you're an artist, you're a creative person. So try and find a solution for those things to hopefully make all of this manageable. And yeah, good luck to everybody. Thanks for buying this tutorial again, and I hope you like the main chunk of the tutorial as well as the supplemental material. The brushes are on here as well if you want to go through them. And again, I don't know how many times I've said brushes won't solve your problems, but they're good tools. Anyway, thanks for listening to me ramble on for a little while. I appreciate it. Goodbye.